I wrote an article about the glamorizing of divorce. Like, I'd seen everywhere, like the Guardian was talking about the joy of divorce parties. Yeah. There's, like, Vogue was talking about this Valentine's Day, let's hear it for divorce. The New York Times called divorce a radical act of self-love. So I was seeing all of this. And I was also researching Gen Z's mental health crisis and reading through all of these reports. And all of the reports would talk about things like the economy, the climate crisis, being reasons for Gen Z's anxiety, which just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think a 13-year-old cares more about the climate or the economy than if their parents are talking. I think a lot of it is closer to home. And I think there's this denial going on about it because, we've got the most mentally ill generation on record, and family breakdown is just barely mentioned, even though we know that having divorced parents leads to you're more vulnerable to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse. There was even a study that showed that parental divorce has more of a negative impact on educational attainment than parental death. So we know that it has a huge impact, and yet it isn't factored into the mental health crisis.
And why? Sorry, Francis, I just want to finish this point. Why do you think that is, Freya? Because I know that, like, in our day, it was, you can't talk about the breakdown of the family because you're demonizing hardworking single moms. That's the argument, right?
Yeah.
Is that still the argument, or is there a different, is every form of family, quote unquote, they're all equally valid now?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of things. I think a lot of it is just this idea in modern life that everything should be fun and easy all the time, and any kind of responsibility is restrictive and inconvenient. And so I think a lot of parents kind of lived by that. They kind of were conditioned by society to think, the ultimate freedom is your own happiness. I think for some marriages, obviously there's reasons for divorce, but I think that was also happening. And I think now we're seeing the consequences of that. And I think a lot of parents are still maybe in denial about the impact that it's had, because it was something like they asked children of divorce how it affected them. And 4 out of 5 parents said that their children were fine with it, whereas literally 75% of the children had things like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse.
It's a hard thing to admit, of course, especially if you felt that the divorce was, important or necessary, or it was genuinely, people can't always keep it up, but it's just, we've seen over the last 60, 70 years, that rate is skyrocketed in every Western society.
I think it's too close to home for people, because if you're talking about it, everyone knows someone who's gone through a divorce, or their parents have, so it's really hard to talk about, and it's much easier to look at things like the financial crash or the climate. Whereas I think for young people, their world is their friends and family. It's who's close to them. And I think something like divorce makes much more sense to me why you would feel anxious than something far away like the climate crisis.
And what is your generation's attitude to motherhood? Do the girls still want to get married? Do they still believe in that married, having 2 kids, a family? Or are they kind of more seeking careers and all of that path?
Yeah, well, I think it's half of women are now childless by their 30th birthday in England and Wales. And there's loads of reasons for that, obviously, decline of religion, feminism. But I think there's been an attitude shift in Gen Z. Like, through my experiences, I don't know any women in their early 20s who are excited about motherhood, who talk about it, who have it in their vision. I think we're either terrified of it, or we don't want to, or we're putting it off as long as possible.
Why are you terrified of it?
I don't think I am.
No, sorry. You said we are, and I said you. Like,
I think
what's the source of that fear?
It's that kind of message again from society that you should only pursue things that make you comfortable and happy. And I think we've kind of emphasised the personal discomfort of it. Everything you'll sacrifice. We've grown up in societies with more comfort and convenience than ever before. So it makes sense that we would be more risk averse about anything uncomfortable. Like, if you go on child-free TikTok, it has like 780 million views, and it's mostly girls, pretty much all girls, talking viscerally against motherhood. There's one that does a free birth control series where she just shows you like the most horrifying aspects of motherhood, whether it's losing sleep or your child being sick on you, or all of these things. And all of the comments are just like, they don't even understand why you would ever do that, because they just think, oh, it's all about personal discomfort. And to them, it seems puzzling why you would want to have children, because it just gets in the way of that so much. But I think it's kind of sad, because I think a lot of Gen Z will miss out or delay something meaningful for their own personal discomfort so they can live their best life. And I think it might backfire.
Do you think it's part of the reason is a whole generation which has essentially had their brains hacked to believe that instant gratification is the best form of gratification? And children are not instantly gratifying a lot of the time.
Yeah. I think, any of these meaningful things where you have to, your gratification is delayed, you have to compromise and sacrifice. I think as a whole, we find those things much more daunting, because we've had comfort and convenience at our fingertips. Anything we want, we can kind of have much quicker than your generations did. You'd have to, if you wanted to speak to a girl, you'd have to get the courage to do it. If you wanted to get a job, you'd have to get the courage to go in and ask about it. All of these things have been made much more convenient, which is good. But then I think we've developed this irrational fear of things like discomfort and sacrifice. And I think that's part of why we're seeing decline in motherhood, marriage, because those things do come with compromise and discomfort.